There we go. Good to see you. Uh, yeah, weather seems to be not too bad these days. So I hope you're comfortable wherever you are. Let's begin with some prayers, um, as is the tradition. And if you could make that a little bit larger, yeah, Louise. Sangye chodang soki chognam la changchu badu dagni kapsu chi. Dagi chunen gipe sognam ki drola penche sange drupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. These are the triple gem that we call the source of refuge. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chognam la changchu badu dagni kapsu chi dagi chunyan ki pe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho. Then in order to create the auspicious condition for receiving the teaching, we will offer a mandala and request the teachings by offering this ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm. May all migrators enjoy a pure realm. So although this verse only mentions one sort of system, solar system, one can imagine multifold systems of Mount Merus with their suns and the four continents and so forth, as is explained in the prayer of Samantabhadra, you know, millions and millions of them. O holy and perfect pure lamas, from the clouds of compassion that form the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, so the short prayers, uh, relatively speaking, sometimes when Lama Zopa Rinpoche gives courses at Kopan in the past, there would be a whole puja, the Jorcho puja, and the first classes, which people sort of threw people praying to all of these lamas, and especially in Tibetan, didn't sort of sit well. So we do more abbreviated form. Uh, so let's begin with a little, quiet meditation. Try to uh, create in our mind some, some quiet, sort of to reduce the conceptualizations that were going on, first of all, through the breathing meditation, and then to go deeper, looking at the clear light nature of the mind. So, as my brother's answering machine used to say on the telephone, you know what to do. As you're progressing, remember to relax your body. And remind yourself you don't have to follow all sorts of distracting thoughts. You're trying to hold just the respiration with your mindfulness, with some just added wisdom that recognizes whether it's coming in, the breath is an inhalation or an exhalation, whether it's long or short. But other than that, let go of other thoughts. Then when you've reached a point of some success in calming the mind through that method, change the object that you're being mindful of to the mental consciousness. You can, if you like, imagine withdrawing your attention away from the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and tactile organs, the skin and so forth, to your heart. Hunker down in the cave of your heart chakra. And with your mental consciousness alone as the object of observation, how can you do that? By recognizing its contents, because to take the consciousness itself as an object is difficult because it's a subtle, very subtle object. But you can recognize its qualities through its contents. Like you can recognize the quality of the space by looking at the clouds, even though this is a gross example of space, not the non-affirming negation of space, but space offers no resistance to the development of clouds on a sunny day, if there's a lot of moisture, nor their evaporation sort of absorbing back into space itself. Similar to the mind. You don't have to be unhappy. If there's unhappy thought in the mind, that can, by not paying attention to it, not stoking it, not giving the cloud of that black cloud more moisture or whatever it needs, starving it, it can absorb back into the consciousness and you can be left in a neutral state. This fantastic quality of the mind is something that all sentient beings have, although they rarely have the chance to recognize it. We have this opportunity now, this auspicious occasion of a life of leisure and endowment. Having heard the teachings and been guided, we can recognize this as part of our equipment, our nature, our entity, this conventional clear light nature of the mind. The fact that we can develop into a more fully enlightened being. This is a cause for joy. Also a cause for caution, recognizing that it's this opportunity that we have right now, life of leisure and endowment, is not eternal, is changing with every moment. And the only thing between us and the next life, perhaps, is the next breath. We don't know when we're going to pass away. But we can use this life as we have attempted to do sometimes in previous lives, but never fully completed, use this life to overcome our own faulty states of mind, say, for instance, leading to liberation, to nirvana, or if we follow the Buddha's advice for his more intelligent disciples, he said, not to be satisfied with that lower vehicle teachings alone, you should strive for the Mahayana, the hallmark of which is the ability to lead all beings in this yana, this vehicle, this big vehicle, to the great destination, the Maha destination of enlightenment. The decisive difference between that and the Mahayana and the Hinayana approach is the development of bodhicitta, a mind that is intent on achieving enlightenment for the sake of others. Or you could put it the other way around, for the sake of others, knowing the only way that you can really benefit them in a way that's suitable to repay their kindness, their worthiness. The only way that we can repay that is by ourselves becoming enlightened so that we can lead them without error in the stages that lead to enlightenment. So we have to develop bodhicitta, which requires a great store of merit, collection of merit. And to fulfill the aims of the bodhicitta, we have to practice the six perfections, especially the perfection of wisdom, which culminates with the omniscient mind, say the wisdom Dharmakaya. Substantial cause, say the cooperative cause of which is the collection of wisdom. So we need collection of merit, both to develop bodhicitta and to achieve the rupakayas of the Buddha, the Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya. And we need the collection of wisdom even to achieve nirvana, let alone enlightenment. The text we're studying, Gompa Rapsel by Lama Tsong, it comments on Chandrakirti's Madhyamakavatara and its auto-commentary, which is itself a commentary on Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom. Again, commenting, taking the essence from Lord Buddha's Prajnaparamita Sutras. This explains especially the collection of wisdom, and incidentally also the collection of merit in a very special way, bringing in other sources. So think, for the sake of sentient beings who are, from our point of view right now, limitless, when we think of the numberless world systems in which sentient beings are existing in the various realms, either in suffering realms or relatively pleasurable realms. Sentient beings, like to the extent of space, whatever you can imagine, even beyond the space of our certainly our galaxy or our local group or our universe, beyond that, other universes, all of these sentient beings we have a karmic relationship with. They have all been our mother numberless times and been depthlessly kind. A big responsibility. We can actually begin to repay their kindness by striving for enlightenment for their sake. So think, I'm going to participate today in the class, listening, contemplating, and meditating in order to achieve that state of omniscience in which we can manifest the form bodies for the benefit of sentient beings, spontaneously and effortlessly, without error, lead them eventually into that same state of enlightenment. Okay. Yeah. Bring your attention back to the present. Yeah. So I just noticed both Paul and Snehi putting their glasses on again. So Anna, did you leave your glasses on when you meditate? You also, okay. Yeah. It seems to be. KT, do you take your glasses off to meditate? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess that's it. Richard, you meditate. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay, good to see you all. Hi, Ron. Karen and David are up in Ohio with Karen's mom's 92nd birthday party. And various people are off doing other things. Shanka has a migraine, Venerable Shanka. So before we begin, any questions that have been vexing you and have been causing you heartburn, beyond which you could take a Tums or a Prevacil? Yeah, KT.
Hi, thanks. I just have a terminology question on the word signlessness.
Right?
Does that mean empty of a conceptual elaboration when we use that term? Like signlessness?
So when there are various expressions that are similar to that, right? We say emptiness, signlessness. What's the third one? When we talk about the three
Wishlessness.
wishlessness, right?
Oh,
Wishlessness, mubba meba. When we talk about the three doors of liberation,
oh,
sometimes, so when you talk about doors of liberation, there's a book called The Door of Liberation. Don't confuse with that. There's a concept that the Buddha taught, the doors of liberation. So emptiness refers to the non-inherent nature of all phenomena. Wishlessness refers to the non-inherent nature of phenomena that have yet to come, that you might wish for, let's say. Signlessness refers to the non-inherent existence of phenomena of the past. In that triad, but generally signlessness can refer to just to emptiness in general.
thank you.
Yeah, does that help a little? Yeah.
Yes.
Snehi, I think you're about to ask a question. No? Okay, I thought that was a precursor. Richard, anything? Okay. No one has any questions. Okay. So I think we received an email, I'm not sure what it was from, IMI, the International Mahayana Institute or something like that, where there was a quote from Lama Yeshe. It was, that was very clever. Lama had said he thought it was a good investment in developing the Western Sangha. I thought that was a very clever way of sort of approaching the Western mind. Yeah, that's a good investment, you know. In that the Sangha, well, not only the ordained Sangha, but the the lay Sangha, the students and so forth that have taken the various vows and are practicing Dharma sincerely, that they were the representatives of the Dharma, and that was one of the best ways to spread the Dharma. Lama had said, best way to spread the Dharma is to be the Dharma, sort of like to exemplify the Dharma, to be dharmic, right? So when other people are around you, they benefit. Even though they don't notice you particularly, there's something that comes across. If you don't kill mosquitoes, for instance, or you try to save the mouse, or you uh, you feel sympathy for the roadkill on the road in the car as you're driving by, and you mention that, and others leaves an imprint in their mind. Uh, and being honest and being friendly and not always finding fault or being aggro. uh, is that an expression that people use? Aggressive and so forth. Uh, all of these are simple ways of practicing a being dharmic that acts as a source of benefit to sentient beings, and sort of spreading the Dharma. People are more prone to listen, to read about or listen to the Dharma if they know someone who is practicing the Dharma, and how it seems that they're a happy person and that they are level-headed and kind and so forth and so on. Okay, I just wanted to share that. I thought Lama Yeshe's use of the word was a good investment in the Western Sangha, sort of to our minds who are always looking at our bank accounts or our 401k or whatever, where we can best make use of our resources. Okay, so we are going to begin today with a little section here in Thupten Jinpa's translation in the written text, page 305, I understand, and in the FPMT translation, page 170. And in Thupten Jinpa's translation, it has, at the beginning, it has a bracket says Chittamatra. So Diana, when you get back, if you look at this later, because you have the, like me, you have the, what do you call it, the electronic edition, you can look for the words given that the settled meaning, that will bring you to this this paragraph. So Thupten Jinpa's translation begins in brackets Chittamatra. So this is a Chittamatra statement. Given that the settled meaning of the scriptures is known to be as we have explained above. So this Chittamatra talking. This is saying, you know, when it says the settled meaning, this is what it really means, is what we say it means, as we have explained above. One should accept without hesitation, therefore, that dependent nature has intrinsic existence, or we would say inherent existence. So that's the claim of the Chittamatra, that the dependent nature, when we talk about these three natures that we've sort of alluded to before, they're becoming a sort of detailed explanation of these three natures later. When we talk dependent nature, they say it has intrinsic existence or is inherently existent. Now, would Prasangika accept that? Well, if you talk about intrinsic existence, maybe Madhyamaka would say that. Some of the Svatantrikas do accept inherent existence, but this certainly is not Prasangika point of view. So the sentence continues, or the paragraph continues. This is because we Chittamatrans maintain it to be the cause of the entire network of conceptualization, such as the apprehension of things of the subject and object world as imputed as existing as substantially distinct from one another. Okay, that gets a little bit difficult for me to understand at the end of that. So in Venerable Jones' translation, let's see, how does she translate that? This would be on page 170, right? Yeah, so she says, or she translates the same Tibetan this way. Because of that, so this is right after the verse 647. So I didn't read that to begin with. So this is the verse that's being referred to in the Basham. In Chandrakirti's Basham, it includes a verse, but in Lama Tsongkhapa's Gompa Rapsal, he doesn't include the verse. He just he sort of expects you to know it from memory. So this verse says, again, this is sort of the Chittamatra point of view. Therefore, dependent nature, which is the cause of imputed things, has intrinsic existence. It emerges in the absence of external objects. What's that mean? Dependent nature emerges in the absence of external objects. 2, it actually exists. And 3, it is beyond the realm of concepts. Or as Venerable Joan translates, the first 2 lines of that, because that's what's being talked about here. Because of that, whatever is the entity of the other powered. So when we talk about other powered, Jimpa translates it here as dependent nature. Remember, other powered phenomena, Shen Wang. Shen means, you've heard many times when we talk about, production from other Shen. So Shen Wang means other powered phenomena. That means phenomena that are not autonomous, but under the influence or the power of other causes and conditions. So that Jimpa just translates that as dependent nature. Because of that, whatever is the entity of the other powered becomes the cause of imputedly existent things. That's the verse in question here. So in the commentary in FPMT translation of that says, because of that, that's the first few words of the stanza there, 647 AB. Whatever is the entity of inherently existent other powered phenomena. So she's the Lama Tsongkhapa is added in as commentary. Whatever is the entity of other powered, meaning other inherently existent other powered phenomena or dependent phenomena, is to be unquestionably asserted. This is because they are asserted to be the cause, or in other words, the basis of all the net of conceptions without exception, such as apprehending the things that are apprehended. Remember when we talk about in various ways when we talk about subject and object. So the objects are considered to be that which is apprehended, and the subject is the apprehenders, right? So such as apprehending the things that are apprehended or apprehended, and the apprehenders, the subjects, as imputed as existing as different substances. It makes sense? Okay, everyone's thinking. Yeah, Snehi.
Actually, Venerable George, I am a little bit confused about the little 4-line verse 647. You know, the very first point where it says, therefore, dependent nature, which is the cause of imputed things, has intrinsic existence. It emerges in the absence of external objects. What does that mean? I don't get that.
Well, literally what it means is that there's no duality of external objects that are a separate entity from the mind. So that means in the, let's see how that
I see.
Yeah, so that line further on in the FPMT translation, Venerable Joan translated, they arise in the absence of external apprehendeds. So dependent phenomena that do exist, which are really there, they arise without being a different entity from the mind that's perceiving them. That's another way of perhaps saying that.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that help a little with that?
Yeah, I was just confused. I just read it the wrong way. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so yeah. Venerable Jones' translation is broken up differently than the way that Thupten Jinpa has put the verse. He's put the whole verse here, but FPMT translation has it separated, the first two lines here and then the next two lines later. That's because Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't put the verse in there. You have to sort of figure out where you'd like to put it. Okay, so this is the Chittamatra position. Now the text continues. Now the illusion of a snake that is based, oh, did I finish that? This is because we maintain it to be the cause of the entire network of conceptualization, such as the apprehension of things as existing substantially distinct from one another, with that phrase in there, of the subject-object world as imputed. This is because we maintain it to be the cause of the entire network of conception. So conventionally existent phenomena or dependent phenomena, which are other powered phenomena, that's the terminology that Chittamatra likes to use, are the cause of all of the conceptualizations that we have, the network or the net of conceptualizations. The idea of a net is very prominent in various Buddhist scriptures. One of those devices in the ancient world that people knew about, catch fish and so forth, and catch animals. Here, This is because we maintain it to be the cause of the entire network of conceptualization, such as the apprehension of things as substantially distinct from one another, exists, of the subject-object world. So, such as the conception that the subject and the object are substantially distinct from one another. That's considered to be a no-no by Chittamatra, right? They're not, for Chittamatra, they are coming from the same substance, from the same bija, from the same seed, or visana, or imprint. They're of the same entity. They're not different. Okay, so then the text continues. Now the illusion of a snake that is based on seeing a coiled rope does not arise when no rope is present. Okay, now we get back to example that we've encountered before and we'll encounter again when Prasangika explains some more. One of the misconceptions, one of the examples, famous examples, is this example of imputing a snake on a rope. So the rope, say in a darkened room, especially if it has some, maybe, so one of those ropes that has two different colors wrapped around one another. So it could look like a colored snake. It doesn't have to be. It could be a black snake or a white snake if it's just a rope. That is completely devoid of being a snake, right? But because of misapprehension and theorizing in the mind, one can, in one's own mind, grasp at that. That is, not with your hand. You'd probably be afraid to grasp it, but with mind, apprehend that to be a snake. So it says, now the illusion of a snake that is based on seeing a coiled rope does not arise when no rope is present. That's clear, right? And similarly, the false perception of objects, such as vases and so forth, the false perception of objects such as vases does not occur just in the sky without some physical locus. What does that mean, without some physical locus? Chirogi domeba, wombawala sopa chiro trupa topa trugi. Let's see. How does Venerable Joan translate that? Mistaking a snake on account of a rope is not produced on the basis of a non-existent rope, if the rope is not there. And making a mistake on account of a pot and so forth is not produced in the area of the sky which is without earth.
Yeah, the Tibetan is just sa.
Right. Without some physical locus, Thupten Jinpa is saying. So she's, Venerable Jones, perhaps more precise literally there.
Venerable George?
Yes.
Do we understand this second paragraph as also representing the Chittamatra point of view, or is this the Madhyamaka response?
Let's see. What does it say? So it hasn't phased over to Prasangika yet. I think this is still the Chittamatra view. No, this is their point of view. So let's read a little bit further. In the same manner, there is the question of what is the basis or cause of the illusion that conceives things such as a blue patch as external, since there is no external reality. So this is Chittamatra asking this, is stating this. So in the same manner, there is a question of what is the basis or cause of the illusion. So they're saying that it's an illusion that a blue patch seems to be external to the eye consciousness that's perceiving it. When it says blue patch, piece of cloth, it doesn't necessarily mean like a patch that you're going to patch your clothes with. Just means, if you go to the clothing store sometimes, you look at patches, little segments of cloth of the different colors, you know, they go through, oh, would you like this one? So from the Chittamatra point of view, that's an illusion that the object, the blue patch, is different, is separate from the consciousness that's perceiving it. In the same manner, there is a question of what is the basis or the cause of the illusion that conceives things, such as a blue patch, as external, since there is no external reality. Therefore, one must accept without doubt, the Chittamatra says, without hesitation. Usually in Tibetan, we say, don miseba, without, yeah. Therefore, one must accept without doubt the existence of an imperfect dependent nature that is perceived in dualistic terms of substantially distinct subject and object. So there is the existence of that dependent nature that is misperceived in dualistic terms, which is the cause for the illusion of external reality. And this basis of perception, in other words, dependent nature, constitutes the cause of both the bondage to an afflicted existence and the freedom of enlightenment. This basis of perception. So dependent phenomena themselves, or we could say from different terminology, we could say conventionally existent phenomena, constitute the cause of both bondage to samsara and freedom that leads to enlightenment. Okay, let's read Joan, just because this is a little bit thorny, not as thorny as some of the others. Because of that, unquestionably, the cause of the mistaken conception of them, these dependent natures, as external objects is necessarily asserted to be the impure other-powered phenomena that appear as if the apprehended and apprehender are two different substances. Because this very basis of appearance is the cause of both the bondage of the thoroughly afflicted and the freedom of the completely pure. Okay. How are we doing? Making sense? Maybe you have to read again. How are you doing, Mikhail? Is it?
Yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah, I just don't understand how the Chittamatra can say that dependent arising. I mean, the dependent arising for them is coming from imprints of the mind, in the mind, right?
Well, here they're not saying dependent arising, they're saying dependent nature, right?
And so they do not exist externally, so you see them through an imprint?
They do, remember there's this subtle point. They do you can say that there are external objects, but they're not external objects that are different substances or different entities from the mind that's perceiving them. They do accept, in some cases, you know, that's the big debate, that there is an external reality. Someone says, well, how can you say there's an external reality when you said that everything's the nature of the mind? It means there's no external reality that's a different nature than the mind. Yeah, John.
I just wanted to ask Venerable, why the qualification of impure other-powered phenomenon? Is that because Shen Wang has both a pure and impure aspect?
Yeah, I would think so. So here, let's see, where is it coming in there? Yeah. Therefore, one must accept, reading Jimpa, therefore one must accept without doubt the existence of an imperfect dependent nature, or as Venerable Jones said, impure dependent nature. Where is that in the Tibetan?
It is Madakpa, I think.
Is it Madakpa? Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, Madak Shen Wang.
Madakshanwa. Okay, so impure. Chimpa says imperfect. So, say for instance, what would be a pure dependent nature?
Would it be the dependent nature absent the imputed nature?
I don't think so. I think the pure dependent natures would be things like the Buddhist qualities and things like that
Oh,
that are not impure. But what we perceive are the impure ones. So it says, therefore, one must accept without doubt the existence of a impure or imperfect dependent nature that is perceived in dualistic terms as substantially distinct subject and objects, which is the cause for the illusion of external reality. And this basis of perception constitutes the cause of both the bondage to afflicted existence and the freedom of enlightenment. Okay. Yeah, so good. So think about in either of these two systems, Jimpa's translation continues, whether Madhyamaka or Chittamatra. So we're talking about the Mahayana tenet systems, right? So starting with Chittamatra and then Madhyamaka, which is divided up. In either of these two systems, if there is a presentation of emptiness, whereby the very thing that constitutes the basis of clinging, which is to be understood as the thing that ordinary sentient beings perceive and grasp as truly existent in the manner they perceive it to be. Long sentence, right? So start again. In either of these two systems, we're talking about Chittamatra, Madhyamaka, if there is a presentation of emptiness, whereby the very thing that constitutes the basis of clinging, so that means the thing that people perceive to be truly existent. Remember when we were talking about clinging or any kind of conceptions, they all find their root cause in the appearance of phenomena to be truly existent and our belief in that, our grasping to that, the grasping to true existence. As it says in there, the thing that ordinary sentient beings perceive and grasp as truly existing or truly existent in the manner they perceive it to be. So they perceive it to be truly existent and they grasp or assent to that appearance. They believe that appearance. That's the cause of giving rise to all of the other kinds of conceptual misapprehensions. So if there is a presentation of emptiness whereby the very thing that constitutes the basis of clinging is shown to be empty of that mode of existence, if you can show that that is empty of being inherently existent from Prasangika point of view, or Chittamatra is not saying that that's, that emptiness means the emptiness of inherent existence, right? They say emptiness means the emptiness of being this kind of dual appearance, that there is a separate reality, outer reality from the subjective minds that are perceiving it. That's their meaning of emptiness. So that has to be understood here. This is talking about in either of these two systems, if there is a presentation of emptiness, so there's two different presentations of emptiness, right? Prasangika says there, or let's say Madhyamaka in general says that phenomena are empty of being truly existent. We can use truly existent because that covers all the Madhyamakas. From the Chittamatra point of view, their emptiness is not that emptiness. They're saying that things are empty of being, that phenomena are empty of being as they're perceived to be a duality between the subject mind and the object that is being perceived, that they are void of that, they are empty of that. Okay. then the realization of such emptiness constitutes the path to liberation. So that's what Chittamatra would be saying also, that you have to realize this misapprehension that you have about subjects and objects, or the more subtle version of that duality that we've talked about before. Paul, what do you remember? What do you call that?
Yeah, so there were two. One was that it was the absence of subject-object duality, right? And then the other one was that phenomena are not established by way of their own characters, the reference of terms and concepts.
Right. So this is the more subtle version that verges. So it seems very similar to Prasangika presentation, that phenomena don't have a characteristic basis for names. So when you see something, if you see a rose, a flower, for the first time, it's not as though you immediately know that's a rose. The name does not adhere into that. It's not the basis, is not inherently existent in that. So that's sort of leaning a little bit toward Prasangika view. So these two views, these two ways of talking about emptiness in the Chittamatra are not mentioned right here, but in the Bodhisattva Bhumi, what is it? Artemis Engels, wonderful translation. We'll be referring to that also because there's some quotations from that, the Bodhisattva Bhumi, there and in other Chittamatra texts. So Bodhisattva Bhumi is mainly talking about the path structure of the Bodhisattvas, but when it's talking about the wisdom that realizes emptiness, it's referring to the Chittamatra view of emptiness. And there it's leaning to the subtle or the more subtle meaning that Paul has just reminded us of, that phenomena are not the characteristically the basis of names and concepts. And if you have a chance to, if you have that text and you want to read a little bit about that presentation, it actually mentions the so-called logic of that. I'm going to change my glasses again here. Sometimes I have both pairs on. In the section on the nature of reality in book 1 of that. So starting on page 77 of that text, it says, the form of application, is another way of saying the form of reasoning that establishes the meaning of ultimate reality. So from Prasangika point of view, we would have different reasonings that establishes ultimate reality, right? From the Chittamatra point of view, they're talking about this subtlemost meaning in that text. Here, we're mainly talking about subject-object duality, which are said to be derivable from one another. Is that right, Paul? What did Jeffrey say about that?
I think it said that they are equivalent, but that the Tibetan tradition never seems to actually tell why.
Right. I think in the Drangme Lekshe Ningpo and Lama Tsongkhapa's exposition about the definitive and interpretable sutras, when he's talking about the Chittamatra section there, Jeffrey in a footnote mentions that there is some kind of logic that supposedly you can derive one from the other. But yeah, like you say, it's not stated explicitly. So supposedly they're equivalent. One might appeal, the subject-object duality seems more easy to understand on one level. Okay, let's read a little bit further here. If one does not take the negation of that conceived object of ordinary sentient beings clinging to be true existence, and I think here it actually just says true, because from the Chittamatra point of view, the conceived object of ordinary sentient beings clinging is considered to be true, right? If one does not take the negation of that conceived object of ordinary sentient beings clinging to be true.
Oh, Venerable George,
Yeah.
I think it's if one does not take the negation of that conceived object of ordinary sentient beings clinging to true existence to be, what's it say? To be the realization of emptiness. I think it's the negation of sentient beings clinging to true existence.
So, do I have the right Tibetan here? Shenyu Sunjun. Where are we talking about here?
Yeah.
One has to take the nation of that conceived knowledge to be true existence. Do I have the Tibetan there? Okay, I don't have the Tibetan. Do you see, Gail? Are you following the Tibetan there?
It's page 207, the second line. Right? Is that right?
I don't know which page.
I think it's
Are you following in the Tibetan there?
yeah, I think in the Tibetan it's on page 207. The PDF is 280.
Which are you reading, Paul? The Thupten Jinpa's Tibetan.
Yeah, yeah, I think he's saying, yeah, is that? Yeah, I think it's Senjin Rangawa Nangi Dembar Shembe Shenyul.
Dembar.
Dembar Shembe
Right,
Shenyul.
Dembar. Right. It's just true as true.
Yeah.
It doesn't say truly existent. In Venerable Jones, I don't have the Venerable Jones there. So in Venerable Jones, I think she just has true. Likewise, externalizing exists in that way that okay, I can't find that immediately. But anyway, let's go back. So in either of these two systems, Madhyamaka or Chittamatra, if there is a presentation of emptiness whereby the very thing that constitutes the basis of clinging is shown to be empty of that mode of existence. So the basis of clinging is the conception that the phenomena are existing the way that they appear. That's said to be true. For the Chittamatra, what things appear to be true is that there's a subject-object duality. For Prasangika, what appears to be true is that phenomena seem to exist inherently from their own side. Okay. If one does not take the negation of that conceived object of ordinary sentient beings clinging to be true, or to be true existence, to be the realization of emptiness, but if you want to establish some other extraneous emptiness to be truth instead, this will not be an antidote to any level of the clinging to true existence, coarse or subtle, that has been ingrained in us since beginningless time. One's efforts then will be fruitless. De medo, yeah, one's effort will be deba meba, will be without result. So in other words, it's just saying that the Chittamatra says you have to understand, in the same way that Prasangika say, you have to understand the basic cause of all of the conceptualizations that cause us to create negative karma, right? All comes down to a misapprehension about phenomena. And if you don't realize that phenomena are empty of that, whether it be the Chittamatra view of emptiness or the Prasangika, you're not going to be able to achieve liberation. This will not be an antidote to any levels of clinging to true existence, coarse or subtle, that has been ingrained in us since beginningless time. To the innate, it won't be an antidote to the innate delusions. one's efforts will then be fruitless. So this is still Chittamatra point of view, but is applicable because the last sentence at the beginning, it says, in either of these systems, whether Madhyamaka or Chittamatra, if there's a presentation of emptiness, that's sort of the context there. How are we doing? Making sense? Nadine? The magnification of your face is small, so I can't tell. Some faces are larger, so I can't see your eyes or your. No, you don't. I don't mean you have to get closer. It's okay. There we go. So I can't tell so much what you're thinking. John, what do you think?
I just wanted to ask if you would restate what you were summarizing as the more subtle presentation of the Chittamatrans' view of emptiness, which then is close to Prasangika.
Right.
Just the way I'm not sure I followed.
Yeah. So we encountered this when we studied. If you notice, I remember Kirti Senchab Rinpoche when he would give teachings. He had at the beginning he had very old glasses. He had a pair of glasses, and then his assistant would come and put another pair of glasses on top.
Over.
I don't know if any of you remember. So I've got two pairs that Brock and Diana so kindly gave me a couple of years ago. So this is my reading glasses. Let's see. I'm looking in the Bodhisattva Bhumi to see if there's a particular sentence here that starts to explain it. There's this section that I mentioned, the form of application. This is on page 77 of Art Engel's translation. The form of application that establishes the meaning of ultimate reality. So he goes into why he's explaining the word application. It means the form of reasoning that establishes ultimate reality. Regarding this, the knowledge of ultimate reality, I'm reading from Bodhisattva Bhumi's translation. What is the form of application or reasoning by which the ineffable nature, the inexpressible nature of all entities can be understood with precision? What's the logic? And it continues, it should be understood that any designation of a unique, and then he has in brackets, essential characteristic. I would say it should be understood that any designation of a unique characteristic, essential characteristic, that occurs in relation to those entities that were described earlier with terms that range from form and feeling to omniscient mind. Remember when we talk about all of the phenomena up to nirvana, is nothing more than a nominal designation. That it has to be understood that any designation of these is just a nominal designation. Such a designation neither describes a real essential nature nor something separate from or different from a real essential nature that represents a thing to which speech refers to, or that an object or is an object of speech. I'm not saying this is clear, but it's complicated. That being the case, the essential nature of entities does not exist in the way as it is described in words. However, it is also not the case that it is completely and totally non-existent. Anyway, I won't go. Paul, can you give your own quick summary of what that subtle more meaning of emptiness is in the Chittamatra?
I can try. I mean, the way that I've understood it is that you can make three statements, that there are three categories that get discussed. One is something being the referent of names and names and concepts. A second is things being inherently existent. And a third being that there is an external world separate from consciousness. And the way I understand it is that Chittamatra negates two of those and accepts one of them.
So it accepts inherent existence, the second one.
It accepts inherent existence and rejects an external world and rejects phenomena being the referent of names and concepts.
Right.
And
So just so that point that rejects it being the basis of names and concepts. So that when you encounter an apple for the first time, you don't automatically know that that's an apple, that you say, oh, that's an apple, right?
right. And then in Prasangika, they likewise negate two of those and accept one.
But
Just that
different.
they accept the existence of an external world separate from consciousness, but they negate inherent existence, and they likewise negate objects being the referent of names and concepts, because if an object lacks inherent existence, it can't be the referent
Right.
of a
For
name and
different,
concept.
yeah,
For a different reason,
for a
exactly.
different reason. Right. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Doris, yeah. What do you think?
Thank you, Venerable. I put something in the chat in very simple terms. Would that be correct?
You put something in the chat. Okay. Emptiness of phenomena being natural basis of names. Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
Emptiness of phenomena being natural basis of names. So what do you mean by that? What are you
Well, I was just
clarify?
trying to put it in my own words, all those words that Paul said about reference and stuff. So and I'm
You didn't
sorry.
say so many words.
Yeah, I know. But would it, does it sound correct? That
So
phenomena aren't naturally, they don't come with their names, you know.
right, you could say that. That's one of the cardinal things here. But what Paul was referring to was this oops. I clicked leave meeting, but I didn't mean to. How did I? Oh, cancel. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah, basically what we're just introducing here, though, although it's not mentioned so much in Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation here, is that there are these two ways of talking about emptiness and Chittamatra. One of them, that's the famous one, when we say Chittamatra, mere mind, means there's all phenomena are merely the nature of the mind. There's no external world that's a different entity from the mind. That's we have introduced before and gone over, but a more subtle version of that has to do with how phenomena are designated with names, how they're imputed, what the basis is, and so forth. That more subtle version sort of is sort of the favorite of logicians, Prasangika logicians, because it's sort of similar to Madhyamaka presentation. Okay.
Yeah, Venerable George.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add, just to comment on Doris's summary. There's a very subtle distinction that's made between being the natural basis of names, that is like, or I should say, between names existing, like, that as you were saying, an apple doesn't come with the name, which there's two ways of looking at that. One is the Sautrantika one that basically says there are no universals that inhere in their particulars, right? That there's no appleness in an apple. But
Right.
There's the more subtle one, which we see in both Prasangika and Chittamatra, which is that there is nothing that even serves as a basis for that name.
Right. Right.
And
So if you have studied tenets before and are familiar with the Sautrantika presentation, what Paul just said will ring a bell with you. If not, you have to go back and read a little bit about Sautrantika. When we
Thank
talk
you, Paul.
universals and particulars.
Yes, that does sound familiar. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's go a little bit further here. And yeah. So where we say one's efforts would then be fruitless. Understood thus, one will come to recognize correctly that just as the dependent nature that appears in dualistic terms is perceived in the dichotomous terms of substantially distinct subjects and objects, the absence of such an imputed nature that one grasps to be real. Here he has just real rather than true or truly existent. That one grasps to be real constitutes the emptiness of that object of negation. Does that make sense? Where is Richard? Let me see Richard's. Yeah. Understood thus, one will come to recognize correctly, one will correctly recognize, so there's a statement, something that's supposed to be true, just as the dependent nature that appears in dualistic terms, so conventional phenomena that are dependent natures, that are other power phenomena, appear to be appear in dualistic terms, just as the dependent nature that appears in dualistic terms is perceived in the dichotomous terms of substantially existent subjects and objects, saying a lot of words just to say something simple there. Just like that, the absence of such an imputed nature. Now, again, we're talking about another one of the three natures when we call the three natures. So we talk about dependent nature, imputed nature, and what is it called?
Thoroughly established nature.
Thoroughly established nature, which means sort of emptiness for Chittamatra. But those three terms can be also applied in Prasangika. We haven't had the full exposition of that yet. As I said, that's coming a little bit later. But again, we're talking about imputed natures. So imputed natures are those things that are imputed upon the dependent natures, right? So the absence of such an imputed nature that one grasps to, let's say what one might be imputing is a duality of subject and object, right? That's an imputation that doesn't really exist. That's a non-existent imputed nature. There's some imputed natures that do exist, but he said that's a non-existent imputed nature. So the absence of such an imputed nature that one grasps to be real, that there's a real dichotomy between subject and object, constitutes the emptiness of that object of negation from that Chittamatra point of view. It could also be applied to Prasangika. And what is left behind, what's left over after you've negated this imputed nature, say after you've negated the duality of subject and object, what's left behind, what's left over, is the basis of emptiness, and emptiness itself. Oh, that's nice. That what's left behind possesses true existence according to this system, according to Chittamatra. So it's just talking about Chittamatra here. Knowing this perfectly, one will comprehend excellently the meaning of emptiness as well. Okay. So I'm fascinated here when it says, and what is left behind, what's left over after you've negated this object of negation. So from the Chittamatra point of view, the simplified object of negation, when I say that of the two, the more simple and the more sophisticated, once you've refuted that phenomena exist as separate entities from the mind, that the phenomena observed are separate entities from the mind. When you refuted that, in other words, you've accepted that phenomena are the nature of the mind, what's left behind after you've refuted that, the basis of emptiness and the emptiness itself. So what's left behind? The basis of the emptiness. So when we talk about, when we've talked about emptiness before from the Madhyamaka or Prasangika point of view, we've talked about the debate that without a basis of emptiness, there's no emptiness, right? You can't have emptiness distinct from some conventionally existent phenomena. That conventionally existent phenomena is the basis of the emptiness. Say the emptiness of the form aggregate doesn't exist without the conventionally existent form aggregate, right? Any kind of thing. So what's left behind is the basis of emptiness and the emptiness itself. Okay, there's something to think about there. Mikhail, what do you think?
So do I understand correctly? So basis of emptiness here is meaning the other powered natures. No?
Well, let's see. Understood thus, one will come to recognize correctly that just as the dependent nature, the Shenwang, other powered phenomena that appear in dualistic terms is perceived in the dichotomous terms of substantially existent subjects and objects, the absence of such an imputed nature that one grasps to be real constitutes the emptiness of that object of negation. And what is left behind, the basis of emptiness, that's what you're asking about, whether that's the dependent nature or not.
Mm.
What do people think? Is that the dependent nature, what's left behind? The basis of emptiness? So from
Is what's left behind the alaya vijnana, because that's the basis, or that's, I don't know.
who said, oh, that was KT's voice. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what
The basis
let's
is,
say from the Prasangika point of view, when we say the basis of emptiness, what would be the basis of emptiness of say, Nadine, of the emptiness of a person? What's the basis of the emptiness?
The person.
The conventionally existent person, the mere I, right?
Yes.
So it's not like anything that's in any way existing inherently or truly or anything. It's just the mere I. That is what appears to us to be inherently existent, and the emptiness of that inherent existence is what's being talked about here. That's when you refuted the imputed object, the from Prasangika point of view, when you've refuted inherent existence on that object, what's left behind then is, from the conventional point of view, let's say from a Buddhist perception of the conventional, is just the conventional object, the mere I, and from the meditative point of view, what's left behind is emptiness itself. So once you've refuted the object of negation, if you're in meditative equipoise, you perceive just emptiness. And when you're out of meditative equipoise, you perceive the mere object. So that's Prasangika point of view. Here, as Mikhail is questioning, what is the basis that's left over? Nadine, what do you say?
The answer is in note 560, that it reads, the dependent nature is the basis. And the imputed nature is what we conceptually superimpose on dependent phenomena. The absence or emptiness of the imputed within the dependent constitutes the consummate or perfect nature. So the dependent nature is the basis in note 560.
Right. So I have that here also. I was going to read that. Thank you for bringing that up. So at the end of that paragraph that we've just been talking about, there's that little 560. So if you have the electronic version, it's very nice. It pops up, the note pops up. Otherwise, you have to go to the back of the book. So as Nadine kindly read, I'm going to read it again. That note says, this paragraph is a paraphrase of a short sentence in Chandrakirti's commentary, and he gives the folio number of that page from the edition that he's using from the Madhyamaka Bhasham. This paragraph is a paraphrase of a short sentence in Chandrakirti's commentary, which in turn appears to be a gloss of a passage from Asanga's Bodhisattva's grounds. So what is Asanga's Bodhisattva's grounds? John, do you know? What would that be? That's a bodhisattva
Bodhisattva
bhumi.
Bhumi, the one
Bodhisattva
who
bhumi, yeah, so he could translate grounds, okay? So bodhisattva bhumi, that's this text, right? So Lama Tsongkhapa's is a paraphrase of what Chandrakirti said, and Chandrakirti's statement seems to be a gloss. What does that mean? On what a Sangha said in the Bodhisattva grounds and in Vasubandhu's commentary on the differentiation of the middle and extremes. So what is that?
That's the Madhyanta Vibhaga or Vibhanga, right?
Yeah, Madhyanta Vibhanga. So Mad means middle, Anta means extremes, Vibhanga, examining the middle extremes. I've mentioned that text several times. That was the first text Lama Yeshe taught us about emptiness, when everyone was so excited. So those are in those texts. This view explains what do I say? So they're making statements in the Bodhisattva Bhumi and in Vasubandhu's commentary on the Madhyanta Vibhagna, or Uttanamche in Tibetan. So that was composed by Maitreya and brought to earth. It was one of the 5 texts of Maitreya, the Madhyanta Vibhagna. So Asanga wrote commentary to it, but Vasubandhu wrote commentary to it. I think Vasubandhu wrote commentary to it. Vasubandhu also wrote commentary to it. So in those texts, it seems to be the basis for this statement by Lama Tsongkhapa. So this view explains the ultimate nature of reality, from the Chittamatra point of view, within the framework of the 3 natures. Remember the dependent nature, the imputed nature, and I keep on forgetting.
Thoroughly established.
Thoroughly established nature. Okay, the good one. This view explains the ultimate nature of reality within the framework of the 3 natures. The dependent nature is the basis, as Nadine was pointing out in answer to Mikhail's question, right? The dependent nature is the basis. The imputed nature is what we conceptually superimpose on dependent phenomena. The absence or emptiness of the imputed within the dependent, so the absence or emptiness of the imputed within the dependent constitutes the consummate. My short-term memory, I can't even remember what Paul said to me again. Was it?
Thoroughly established.
Consummate or thoroughly established or perfect nature, which is the ultimate reality. Okay, so yeah, why don't we take a little break, cool off your brain. If your brain is already cool, you can sit there and analyze this, but I will go off camera, but listen. Okay, we're back from short break. So Richard, do you have any qualms, any doubts how we're doing here?
I have plenty of doubts, but I'm pretty sure that I understand this.
Okay, yeah, I have lots of doubts also. Okay, so let's continue. Stephen, I think, will be coming back on shortly. Doris is in the background. Mikhail probably is getting some good German coffee. Does Nadine, does Mikhail drink coffee or tea? What does he drink?
I don't
No
know.
coffee. No coffee. No.
No coffee. Okay. Yeah, I thought French coffee or something. Okay, so let's continue. We had just finished the last sentence that said, knowing this perfectly, one will comprehend excellently the meaning of emptiness as well. Okay, so then the text continues in Jimpa's translation. The opponent's thesis presented here is the standpoint encapsulated by the phrase, the absence of this in that. This is a phrase that's found in the Bodhisattva grounds, the Bodhisattva Bhumi. That's the text we were referring to before that Jimpa, calls it the Bodhisattva grounds, as well as in the commentary on the differentiation of the middle and extreme. So remember the Madhyanta Vibhagna, or the Uttanamshe in Tibetan. This text, one of the 5 texts by Maitreya, that is introducing supposedly the middle view from the extreme views that superimpose or negate, so forth, to find the correct view. That text was composed by Maitreya, brought to earth by a Sangha, and then his brother Vasubandhu wrote a commentary on that. So these are the 2 texts that are being talked about here. Well, I think we just talked about them a minute ago. So the opponent's thesis presented here is the standpoint encapsulated in the phrase, the absence of this in that, found in those 2 texts. So I'll mention the actual source of that statement, the absence of this and that. The meaning of which is as explained above. So that note 561, where is that? Do I have that here? Okay, I have to go to that. So that note 561 just says, respectively, he's giving the page number in Bodhisattva Bhumi and the page number in Vasubandhu's commentary on the Madhyanta Vibhagna. So he has a Madhyanta Vibhagna Bhasha. So that's just that. And let me just read one more sentence there to the next note. The commentary on the sublime continuum, that's how Jimpa translates the Uttara Tantra. The commentary on the sublime continuum, however, contains an explanation of a similar phrase, that which is absent in that, as opposed to the other one, the absence of this in that. Sounds like the same thing, right? This latter case presents a way of explaining the phrase according to the Madhyamaka standpoint that is totally different from the first 2 texts. So in Uttara Tantra, which was supposedly composed by Maitreya, but brought to earth by a Sangha, and a Sangha wrote a commentary to it, there is totally different from the first 2 texts. So that express in the Uttara Tantra, it seems to be expressing the Madhyamaka view as opposed to the Chittamatra view that some of Maitreya's other texts presented. Remember, we talked about that before. Of the 5 texts of Maitreya, some of them seem to be from the point of view of the Chittamatra. Some seem to be maybe Svatantrika. One in particular that seems like the final point of the Uttara Tantra seems to be Prasangika point of view. So anyway, So here when it says, let me read Venerable Jones' translation of that paragraph. Here, regarding the setting out of the former position, commentary, in the commentaries on the Bodhisattva grounds, Bodhisattva Bhumis, and the discrimination of the middle way and the extremes, that's the Madhyanta Vibhagna, it is explained according to the meaning above of, quote, whatever non-existent regarding any. That's how Joan translated that sentence that Jimpa translated as what? The absence of this and that. Okay. Kang la Kang mepa. So Joan translates it, the Kang, whatever non-existent regarding any. So it's not so clear, and so forth. In the sublime continuum, in the Uttara Tantra, the commentary on the meaning of the statement, whatever does not exist anywhere, and so forth, accords with the Madhyamika's way of commenting, which is not at all the same as the previous two texts. However, fearing too many words, I have not written about it. So that's one thing I didn't read from Jimpa's translation. Again, fearing excessive length, I have not written about this point here. So for those of you who are interested, you can check, yeah. So in the Bodhisattva Bhumi Tibetan text, so the Bodhisattva Bhumi, does the Bodhisattva Bhumi exist in Sanskrit? No, where did John go? Is John there? Or John's off camera?
Venerable George, I think there's excerpts. I don't think it's complete in Sanskrit, though.
Right. So Art Engels, the translator of this translation of Bodhisattva Bhumi, it's a very long, very big book, right? Other portions have been translated maybe by different authors, but there I think he's mainly depending on the Tibetan and figuring out what the Sanskrit is, or using the Sanskrit from the fragments that Paul is referring to. So it's not clear where this phrase comes in Art Engels' translation. I tried to find it with great effort for 2 days, and I can't tell because the way he translates sometimes is different terms and so forth. But it's referring to this this phrase that apparently is found in it's certainly found in the Tibetan version of the Bodhisattva Bhuma, Gangla Gangmepa. So Thupten Jinpa translated it one way, Venerable Joan translated it in a very different way. Okay, so the main point here is that the viewpoint that we've been talking about, the Chittamatra point of view about what emptiness entails and so forth and so on, is essentially expressed in this phrase, the absence of this in that. So what is this and that? If you were to take Thupten Jinpa's translation, what is this and that? What are this and that in that expression, the absence of this in that from the Chittamatra point of view? Mikhail, what do you think?
The absence of the imputed nature in the basis, in the other power
of other power phenomena. Yeah, bravo. Okay, so that's all it's saying. Okay. Someone had a question, and they took down. Yeah, Richard.
I tried to find the other text, the Vasubandhu text, and I couldn't find it. A translation of it, and I looked on 84,000 and elsewhere, and it said it wasn't yet available. Does anybody have a link? Number one, does anybody have a link to that? And number two, there are these codes that presumably point to the verse in the footnote, and I didn't understand the codes, and I was wondering if somebody could.
So the referent in the note there, or as you say, the code, let's say is it 561?
561, yeah. The codes are like TOH 4037.
Right. So let's explain. So TO refers to a big compendium of the text. What does that stand for?
Tohoku. So it's the Tohoku University catalog of the Tengyur, of the Kongyur and Tengyur.
So the Tohoku University, the Japanese scholars are really on it. When I visited Tokyo many years ago, I got a chance to visit the Tibetan center there that works with them. And anyway, they have this, for a long time, they've had this catalog of the Tengyur and the Kongyur from the Tibetan. So that's the text number in that catalog of the Tohoku.
so then the numbers that come after that, then they refer to some place in that compendium, but
No, so this is in that volume. That
In the
volume,
volume,
Mohuku volume 4037, that would be one Tibetan text, right? That's the Bodhisattva Bhumi. Or it would be within that text, in that volume. So that volume might have, Bodhisattva Bhumi is probably the whole text because it's so big. Some of the shorter texts, there are many of them in one volume, but that's volume 4037 of the Tengyur. So that Tengyur means the Shastras, commentaries. Samsam section, that means the Chittamatra section, because yeah. And then it says WI. What does that stand for, Paul? WI.
So so the Samsam is going to be the Chittamatra section of the Tengyur, and then each section is renumbered volumes according to the alphabet. So it would start with ka, ka, ga, nga, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they'd reach ha, ah, then they'd go to I. So it'd be ki, 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 ki. And so this is volume we, which is going to be something like volume 40 something. Let's see, it's going to be, or maybe like volume, I think it's going to be like volume 50 or 49, volume
Right.
49
Okay. So
of the Samsam section.
right. So that we, and in the next one where it says Tangyur Samsam B, as Paul said, they label the volumes with the letters of the Tibetan alphabet. So they start with Ka, it's K-A, then K-H-A, then so forth and so on. When they get to the end, then they go back to K, but it's going to be K-I, and then H-I, and so forth. So that's what those are. And then the last numbers, 25B5 or 2A2, that means the folio 26, the 26th folio, the back. Oh,
Yeah, so side A and side B. So yeah.
Side B. Okay, it's not B from the fifth line on side B. So
I didn't realize I was opening up such a can of worms. So
yes.
on this. I thought it'd be very easy, but
Right, okay.
Okay.
But at some point,
Wait, I couldn't find
should
the
all.
Vasubandhu. I couldn't find a translation of it. So if somebody knows one, I'd be really curious to
Right.
get
So
reference.
Vasubandhu's commentary, I don't know. I'll take a look also. The Madhyanta Vibhagna has many commentaries by modern Tibetan lamas, like in the Kargyu and so forth, because it's important text. Paul or John, do you know of a commentary of translation
Well, I
of?
was just going to make a general suggestion. Anybody wants to pursue this, Paul here in his spare time has created a comprehensive electronic database. I think it only took him, I don't know, 20 years of and all of the Tibetan canon is accessible online, organized according to Sanskrit names, titles, author names, you name it. And it will also, each entry would have information about whether, I don't think it's totally up to date there, Paul, but it would have
it's
all
about 10 years
information
out
about
of date, but
translations.
yeah. And
So
so
it does have, that database also has the English translations of French.
it has bibliographies. It has a bibliographic entries for the English translation. So in the case of Vasubandhu's commentary in the Madhyanta Vibhaga, there's an English translation of that with the root text done by Mario D'Amato and actually published by Columbia University AIBS.
Okay.
So you want Maitreya's Distinguishing the Middle from the Extremes. And that was 2012, New York, American Institute of Buddhist Studies, AIBS. Those are distributed by Wisdom now.
And also, I think more recently, Paul, haven't there been translations done, or maybe they're Tibetan sub-commentaries by I mean, through Sadra, a
Yeah,
guy
so
translates them.
Brunholzel, Karl Brunholzel.
Carl Bruno.
Yeah, but he does they're mostly Kagyu commentaries.
Right. So we're talking
and-
about Vasubandhu's commentary, John.
Right.
That.
Yeah, so they would
Okay.
have a translation of the Madhyanta Vibhaga with a Kagyu commentary, which you'll remember comes from Shendong and takes it as Madhyamaka, so it gets even more complicated.
So
Right.
Richard will be happy. I'm going to close the lid of this can of worms that he opened.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go on.
Great idea. I found the wisdom book. Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Snehi, you look bemused. Not amused, bemused. You okay? Okay. So let's continue with Thupten Jinpa's translation. It says, this dependent nature, we're talking about Chittamatra point of view, right? Emerges from its own habitual propensities alone in the absence of external objects. Right? This is commenting on the root verse that was many pages, well, not many pages, several pages before that. You can see the bold text represents the words from the root text. This dependent nature emerges from its own imprints or its own seeds alone. That means it doesn't depend on external objects alone, in the absence of external objects. It actually exists intrinsically. Okay, let's see here. That's what we were talking about before, where the text said intrinsically. What does it say here? Rangshingi yopa. Yeah, this is what.
Yeah, but the intrinsically is not bold. So I think it's an addition from.
Right. Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary says Rangshingi yopa dang. So it doesn't say Rangshingi drupa. So intrinsically. So this exists by its Rangshingi yopa. This exists
By way of its own character.
It doesn't say that either.
Does it? Or is it?
It says Rangshingi yopa, right?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Rangshingi yopa. So its nature exists anyway, or it exists by nature, and it exists as something that is understood in this Chittamatra system, ultimately beyond the realm of concepts. So what would we say? We're talking about dependent nature. So if Prasangika would say that's the mere I, and for Chittamatra, that dependent nature is beyond the realm of concepts, namely of language and thought. Chittamatra considered the linguistic terms associated with the outer world of objects and the inner world of experience to represent the unanalyzed perspective. What does that mean, right? Is that intuitively obvious to the most casual observer? Mikhail, you're thinking maybe it is? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think they are saying that whatever is conceptually designated is not correct. Something like that.
Chittamatra considered the linguistic terms associated with the outer and the inner to represent the unanalyzed perspective. The linguistic terms associated. So in other words, when you're giving names and concepts, or you're giving names, that is the unanalyzed perspective. Let me read how Venerable Joan translated that. So she has it broken up in a different way because remember I said she puts the root verse in question closer to the commentary on it. Here, the root verse that Jinpa is commenting on here, Lama Tsongkhapa is commenting, was in Thupten Jinpa's text several pages or several sections before. So she says, Chittamatrans, this is their point of view, they arise in the absence of external apprehendeds, this is talking about dependent nature, they arise in the absence of external apprehendeds, exist, and have the nature of being the object of elaborations, and have the nature of not being the object of elaborations. Okay. That's verse 647, the last two lines of it. So Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, she translates it this way. Other powered phenomena, or dependent natures, one, arise only from their respective latencies in the absence of external apprehendeds, right? That's what we were talking about before. They exist inherently. She has this Rang Shen Yu as exist inherently, and have the nature of not being the object of all elaborations, or you could say any elaborations, that superimpose the ultimate on this system. Chittamatra consider the linguistic terms associated with the outer world of objects and the inner world of experiences to represent the unanalyzed perspective. Okay, that's what I wanted to get at. What does that mean, unanalyzed perspective? Snehi, it looks like you're going to say something. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I think it is just, how we normally talk, like we're talking now about tables, chairs, and whatever, we just use it as convenient way of sharing information. We're not really asking, is a table really there or is the pen really there?
Right. So we had this discussion, good to bring up, that we had this discussion before with respect to the Prasangika point of view, that without analyzing what the horse is, remember my example of the blacksmith. You ask the blacksmith, what horse are you making those shoes for? He says, that horse over there. So it's just sort of like without analyzing what the horse is. So from Prasangika point of view, there is a particular meaning. Seems like that's the same kind of meaning here that Snehi has pointed out. Okay, the Chittamatra consider the linguistic terms associated with outer world and inner world of experience to represent the unanalyzed perspective. That means from the perspective of not delving into whether they actually are separate entities, whether they act characteristically as the basis of names and concepts and so forth. Nadine. Yeah.
Thank you. The sentence which you read before, this dependent nature emerges from its own habitual propensities alone and so forth, until ultimately beyond the realm of concepts, namely of language and thought. Is not this exactly the reason why, the two reasons why Chittamatra say that phenomena are empty can be derived from each other?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're saying that this sentence that ends with, or that in the middle of which it is ending beyond the realm of concepts, namely
Yes.
language and thought, that this is explaining that these two
Yeah.
subtle and slightly more easily understood versions of emptiness for Chittamatra are the same. Okay, let's see. The dependent nature emerges from its own habitual propensities alone in the absence of external objects. That seems to be talking about the first version of emptiness for Chittamatra, right? The lack of duality between subject and object. It actually exists intrinsically, naturally, and that's one point. And it exists as something that is understood in this Chittamatra system, ultimately beyond the realm of concepts, namely of language and thought. Well, these are three different things, so I don't think they're making them equivalent, but it's saying that it's on the same level of subtlety, perhaps. Nadine, what do you think?
I think it shows why these are inseparable.
Okay, how does it do that?
Because they are one thing, not two different things.
That these two meanings of emptiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we're told. So why do you say that this proves that? That'd be interesting proof, yeah. That they mean the same thing. They seem,
Because
to our minds untrained, they seem like they're talking about two different things, right? The non-duality between subject and object,
yes,
that the bases don't characteristically act as the basis of names and concepts.
like we said before, one entity, but can be different isolates. One can separate them intellectually, but actually they are one.
Okay, that's a good way of looking at it. Maybe two concepts are yeah, one entity. Yeah, but whether they're derivable from one another, whether this proves that or not. Anyway, okay, let's continue on. Good thinking. So then the text in Jimba's text, it continues. In brief, the dependent nature has three characteristics. Did I read this already? It comes into being in the absence of external reality.
You read Venerable Jones' translation, I think.
Oh, it exists intrinsically, and it is not the object of conceptual elaborations in the ultimate sense as understood in the tradition. Then continues, since being, quote, the cause of the imputed nature of things, the cause of the imputed nature of things. What is the cause of the imputed nature of things?
That's what we were talking about, the basis on which we impute. No?
Right? Or is it the cause, the imputation itself? The cause of imputed things. Okay, because, quote, because since being, quote, the cause of the imputed nature of things is included within the characteristic of, quote, being an intrinsically real entity, unquote, it is not a separate attribute from the three. Okay, so this is just making an analytical point. John, are you keeping awake? You need some.
I know it wasn't a sleepiness problem.
Oh, okay. It was just like, yeah, like, what?
Yeah,
So,
I wasn't so happy with that string of sentences.
With that sentence, yeah. So in brief, the dependent nature has three characteristics. So we talked about these three characteristics. Comes into being in the absence of external reality. It exists naturally or intrinsically. It has a nature, and it is not the object of conceptual elaborations in the ultimate sense as understood in this tradition. Since being the cause of imputed nature of things is included within the characteristic of being an intrinsically real entity, it is not a separate attribute from the three. So they're saying these three attributes are enough because the cause of imputed nature of things itself is included in being intrinsically real. That's the second of those three characteristics, right? The three characteristics. It comes into being in the absence of external reality. It exists intrinsically and is not an object of conceptual elaborations. These three characteristics of dependent nature. And it's just saying the cause of the imputed nature of things is not separate because that's included in the second one. It exists intrinsically. The statement that the dependent nature exists does not refer to its mere existence. It refers to a special kind of existence. Before I go further, Snehi, you have a qualm.
Yes,
correct?
now I'm confused about the third characteristic of the dependent nature when it says it is not an object of conceptual elaborations on the ultimate sense. And then I'm looking, it was phrased a little bit the same way in the prior page, where it is beyond the realm of concepts. So they're saying the dependent nature, when the dependent in nature, which is basically the imprints of the alaya vinyan,
It's not the imprints themselves,
of the seeds.
seeds. When they ripen, it ripens into an object and subject, right? And so those objects and subjects are the dependent nature, if I understand correctly. They are the dependent nature, and they are inexpressible, kind of like when we say when we talk about the perfection of wisdom, masam jome sherab paro chin. The perfection of wisdom is masam jome, is unimaginable and inexpressible and all of these things. The famous verse we recited sometimes in some of our other courses, that verse that's attributed to, I think, Rahula, or sometimes Buddhist son or something like that. Masam Jome Sherab Parochin, sort of praise to the perfection of wisdom. So we say that phenomena are inexpressible. Remember the story I told about me asking the Dalai Lama, if the table is not the parts, it's not the collection of parts, and it's not separate from the parts, what is it? I didn't say it that way. I was more polite. And His Holiness, through Jeffrey's translation at the time, said, this is bordering on the inexpressible. What are phenomena? You can't really express them with words, right? The way that they exist. So I think that's the same thing here in Chittamatra when they're talking about dependent natures. The way it actually exists can't be expressed in words. It has to be experienced in meditative equipoise.
I was kind of on that same page till the following sentence that said, it is the cause of the imputed nature of things. And so then I thought, if it is a cause of imputed nature and, I'm imputing book, pen, whatever, it's hard to then separate that from the inexpressible dependent nature.
I'm not sure what sentence you read, because right in that.
So just the follow. So after that number 3, then it says, since being the cause of the imputed nature of things is included within the characteristic of being an intrinsic. So that's what threw me off, is that if we're saying that the dependent nature, of course, it is the basis of the imputed nature, then, when I'm imputing things and it's coming out of the dependent nature, then isn't that capture the fact that I'm saying something is a book or appears to me as a book?
Not clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's read that.
Maybe it'll come later.
Let's read that sentence just one more time before we throw it away. Since being, quote, the cause of the imputed nature of things, unquote. So I think Mikhail or someone said, the cause of the imputed nature of things, you were saying that is what, Mikhail?
The basis, we were saying before that, yeah, the basis for imputing is the dependent natures.
Right.
And it actually says the cause of the entire network.
Right. Here it says the cause of the imputed nature of things. I thought you were saying that cause was meant to be the basis, that inexpressible basis. That is included within the characteristic of being an intrinsically real entity. It is not a separate attribute from the 3. So why would we even, I mean, there are many other things you can think of. Here it says the cause of the imputed nature of things. The statement that the dependent nature exists does not refer to its mere existence. It refers to a special kind of existence. And to clarify that, if I can continue, is that okay to continue? Okay.
Yeah, please.
So the master Stiramati says this. So who is Stiramati? Remember, Don Stiramati?
I do not.
You remember, because we're always joking in our class at Land of Medicine Buddha about Pat Ryan sort of maybe dozing off or something, but he was like the pigeon. Stiramati in his previous life was said to be a pigeon in the cave where a Sangha was reciting texts. And when he was reborn, or maybe it was Vasubandhu reciting texts, when he was reborn as a human, because of that imprint of hearing, even though he was dozing, or pigeon-like, listening, he became the master of Abhidharma, superior even to Vasubandhu himself. He was Vasubandhu's disciple who excelled Vasubandhu in Abhidharma. So this is a text by Stiramati, and that note 563 in Jimpa's text says this. He just gives the Madhyanta Vibhagna Tika. So Tika means commentary, one of the many words that mean commentary. And again, in the code Tohoku, volume 4032, Richard, of the Tengyur. So the Tengyur means, there's the two sections, the actual words of the Buddha, which are the Kangyur, translation of those, the Kangyur, the Tengyur, the translation of the Shastras, the Semsam, the Chittamatra section, volume B, folio 195B. Okay, so in that, Jimpa's note, that's what Jimpa's note said. But just some information for you. The Madhyanta Vibhagna, what we said, distinguishing the middle from the extremes, is a foundational Yogacara text attributed to Maitreya, said to be it was said to be conveyed to a Sangha, right? It was taught to a Sangha when he did his trip up to Tushita heaven. The Madhyanta Vibhagna Bhasha, the commentary on the Madhyanta Vibhagna, was written by Vasubandhu, a Sangha's half-brother, and another central figure in the Yogacara philosophy. So we've encountered Vasubandhu. If you've ever studied Abhidharma Kosha a little, you think of him as exemplifying the Sautrantika view, criticizing the Vaibhashika view, but he also was a writer of the big proponent of Brother Asanga's Chittamatra system and wrote commentaries on it. So his commentary. So the Madhyanta Vibhagna Tika, the sub-commentary on the Madhyanta Vibhagna, is attributed to Stiramati. So there was a Bhasham to the Madhyanta Vibhagna by Vasubandhu, and then Stiramati, his super smart student, wrote a sub-commentary. I guess that's a better way of translating Tika. Bhasham can mean commentary or auto-commentary. Tika particularly means a sub-commentary. That means a commentary to the commentary. That's kind of like what Lama Tsongkhapa's text is, right? So Stiramati elaborated on Vasubandhu's commentary and helped shape the later Yogacara thought. That was from ChatGPT. Okay, so what we're analyzing here is this statement in Stiramati's commentary, and how does Venerable Joan translate that? Anyway, the next sentence says, recognizing this qualification becomes critical later on. So what is the qualification? When the text states quote, the conceptualization of that which is not real exists, the word intrinsically is implied. So from the point of view of Chittamatra, right? The conceptualization of that which is not real exists. What does that mean? Anyone make a stab at that? Mikhail, what do you think?
But they're saying that the other powered natures truly exist, and they are beyond expression, inexpressible. And
Right,
but we
yeah.
impute things which do not exist, the unreal things. That's what we impute.
Right. And that conceptualization which is not real exists. The conceptualization of that, of that which is not real. Okay. So what is that which is not real? Dichotomy between subject and object, right? Or the fact that the bases act characteristically as basis of names and concepts. So the conceptualization of that which is not real, that's what's not real, exists. That conceptualization exists. And the word intrinsically is implied. So it intrinsically exists or inherently exists for Chittamatra.
Is it talking about the
But
third nature, the thoroughly established nature? No.
he's talking about the conceptualization of that which is not real. So that would be, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
It's a bad thing. That's like grasping to existence, some existence that doesn't really exist, right? The conceptualization of that which is not real, that conceptualization exists. So that does exist. And it is intrinsically existent, inherently existent. Recognizing this qualification becomes critical later on. So hold your horses. So keep that in mind among all the other things you're balancing in your mind, right? That it says, I will explain about this more extensively later. Okay. So I'm just going to read a little bit here to finish off, just to get us to where we'll be starting next time. So next time will be our last class before summer break. So the next section says refuting that standpoint. So originally what the first part of this was stating the Chittamatra standpoint. Now it's going to be refuting that standpoint. This has two parts: an extensive refutation, long-winded refutation, and a summary that concludes the refutation. So starting the extensive refutation, that's what we're going to be now entering into refuting the Chittamatra position on alaya vijnana, external reality, and self-knowers, and so forth. The first is three parts, the extensive refutation. Refuting the analogy for the intrinsic existence of consciousness and the absence of external reality. So Chittamatra has an analogy talking about how consciousness can exist without external reality. Say, for instance, in a dream, if you dream of a herd of wild elephants, if you've been to Sarah J's, you sometimes, if you take a walk in they call it the forest, or they call it the jungle at Sarah. I don't know. Who's been to Sarah? Paul's been to Sarah?
Yes,
John?
you and I went for a walk in that jungle once.
In that jungle. Maybe we were even, at some point, we might even worried that we might encounter some elephants. Anyway, there are wild elephants sometimes. So if you dream about a herd of wild elephants in your dream, and you wake up and you realize there are no elephants there, so that was an apprehension of something without an actual object, external object. So Chittamatra likes to say, oh, that sort of proves, that's an analogy how you can have an apprehension of something that's external when it's really not external, right? So that's what's being referred to the first one, refuting the analogy for the intrinsic existence of consciousness and the absence of external reality. Then refuting the arising of consciousness devoid of external reality through the potency of propensities, through the seeds, and how such refutation is not inconsistent with the meditation on foulness. So what's the meditation on foulness? Don, you're shaking your head. Why?
I have never heard that term before, I guess.
So yeah, we talked about it a little bit when we talk about developing Shine. Oh yeah, and the death meditation. Uh, there are various times when we talk about meditation on foulness. Say, for instance, when you analyze the various parts of the body, the skin. If you were to the beautiful, in the case of a man, say the beautiful woman, or it could be man, uh, that you're so fond of. If you take off their skin, that's not so attractive. You look at the blood, the flesh, the muscle, the sinews, the fluids, the urine, all of this stuff. All of it is foul. All of it is repulsive. We talk about the meditation on repulsiveness. And so that helps to counter attachment. Also, that can be used as one of the objects of shine, of tranquil abiding. You go to the cemetery also and watch, see the bodies, in the charnel grounds, uh, watch them decay over time and the worms appearing after a certain number of days and so forth. So that's how such refutation is not inconsistent with a meditation on foulness. So that will come later. So then we'll just go through these outlines. So next time we don't have to go through them. Refuting the analogy of the intrinsic existence of consciousness and the absence of external reality. That's the first of those three. This has two parts. Refuting the dream analogy and refuting the analogy of seeing floating hairs. Okay, so dreams and floating hairs will come up again. And so the first one, refuting the dream analogy, has three parts. How the dream analogy does not establish intrinsic existence of consciousness. Yeah, Chittamatra would like to use that example, but that doesn't establish it. That doesn't prove intrinsic existence of consciousness. Protestant geek would say that consciousness does not inherently exist. Second, how the dream analogy does not establish the non-existence of external reality, and how the dream analogy establishes all entities, contrary to what Chittamatra thinks, how the dream analogy establishes all entities to be false. Okay, so that's where we're going to be beginning next time. Yeah. So a lot to take in. What do you think? Anyone have a question? Comment? I'm not sure. Someone would like the ice to be broken. Nadine, do you have any question?
Thank you, Venerable George. Today, I always have this one statement by Lama Tsongkhapa in mind, where he said, "Seeing what is not real, you are bound, and seeing the real, you are free."
Right.
Seeing what is
Right. So if you you see so let's say the ordinary beings see phenomena as inherently existent, and they assent to that, they agree with that, they go along with that. So that's seeing the false, I guess. What was the first line of that? Seeing
what is not real, you are bound.
Right. So seeing what is not real is like the inherent existence, and believing in that, you are bound to cyclic existence. Seeing what is real, that the phenomena are empty of that, and in meditative equipoise, seeing that emptiness, that can lead to liberation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Mikhail, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I don't get the last quote from Stiramati just before the new heading.
Right.
Is it saying that mind exists intrinsically or something else?
It's saying that this mind conceptual, so it says the conceptualization, so that's the conceptual mind, right? Conceptual minds exist especially this conceptual mind of that which is not the real, not real, exists, and that has to be added. Stiramati says you have to add the qualifying phrase intrinsically or inherently. Has to be applied there, and this will become crucial later on to understand this differentiation.
So it's not talking about the imputed natures being intrinsically existent, right? It's about the mind.
Right. So is a conceptualization a dependent nature? Other powered phenomena?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I would say, I don't know.
Yeah. So that's why it's intrinsically,
Okay.
that's why it's intrinsically existent also from that point of view. Okay. Wow. We're getting to the point where I think you can use your knowledge and in reading ahead to sort of analyze things, and especially when we have the leisure, the luxury of Venerable Jones' translation, which often, is a counter-distinction to Jinpa's translation. If you know the Tibetan, you can delve into that like Mikhail and John and Paul do, or maybe some of the others. Lucky for us, we live at this time. When I first started studying seriously like this at Khapa, after I'd taken ordination, Geshe Jumpa Gyatso taught us Vasubandhu's Abhidharma Kosha, and then later we studied the tenets text before I was sent off. And at that time, we had very few resources. Now there's so many resources, the 84,000 for the sutras. Slowly there will be the shastras also. Their main thing was to do the sutras first. So many other translations by great scholars, and that we have the help of the students in the class. Many times Paul has supplied, and Mikhail and other people have supplied texts to us to understand, more clearly. So we're getting to the point where one can imagine a Westerner could, without learning Tibetan, maybe in the coming decades, have so many translations into English or into French or German or something that you could, become bodhisattva, achieve enlightenment with never learning Tibetan. Up till now, you almost had to know some Tibetan. Okay, so let's dedicate the virtues that we created. Yeah. So I think it's after that, yeah. Due to these virtues. So the English, this says merits, but it says gewa. So gewa means virtues. That includes both merits and the collection of wisdom. Due to these virtues, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that very state, Desa. And then the prayer to Maitreya that we can think of as a dedication. Due to these virtues, may the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen, may we not lose it, may it not diminish, but increase more and more. And then finally, for the quick return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher, an assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas Pratika Buddha's victorious Losang, means Lama Tsongkhapa, spiritual father, and his spiritual sons, Kedrup Je and Gyaltsab Je, together with your Gelugpa lineage, and all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow here and now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make this request. You who are the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the conqueror's teachings and for the welfare of mother living beings, you suddenly passed away, departed to peace, passed into parinirvana. At this I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the Triple Gem and the great waves of bodhicitta, of the conqueror's children, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And to all our primordial gurus, our current gurus, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging skillfully, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, I make this request. Please live long and stable lives. Okay, so thank you very much. So the 28th is coming up. What is that? What are we today? The 26th? 26th, 28th is coming up. Is that not the day of the turning of the wheel, celebration of the wheel of Dharma? So,
Monday, yes.
so if you have a chance to do some virtuous actions that day, they will be multiplied. There's a very nice email that comes around this time of year, several times a year on these holy days from the Roots Institute in Bodh Gaya, suggesting you might like to dedicate lamps that they will set up around the Mahabodhi Stupa. So if you're interested in that, you can check for the FPMT centers in Bodh Gaya, India, the Root Center. That might be a nice way to create some incredible karma on these karmic multiplying days. Okay, I look forward to seeing you, some of you on Monday. Seems like a good number come. And certainly next Saturday. That will be our last class before the summer vacation. So take care.
Thank you, Venerable
Thank you.
George.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable
Thank you,
George.
Venerable George.
Okay.